taken the opportunity on this visit to Los Angeles to speak to you on world peace and revolt in Africa. These subjects, together with that of the problems of minorities in the United States, form in fact one problem when brought together and viewed in unity. It is that task which I ask you to permit me to essay tonight.
Did not suffer and die to give me an education to slight, oppress, or discourage my people. Because whatsoever education I acquired out of their sacrifice of over 300 years, I shall use for the salvation of the 400 million black people of the world. And the day when I forsake my people, may God Almighty say there shall be no more life for you. I unequivocally rejected the racist assumption of much white American Christianity, namely that God had created the black man inferior and that he had intended Negroes to be...
Welcome to Andile Mngxitama podcast. Today we're going to discuss one of the biggest controversy in the history of the liberation movement of black people. The conflict between GARVEY and W.E.B. Now we know that these two luminaries of the black liberation movement lived in the same time and occupy a very big space in the experiment to try to liberate black people. W.E.B., an American academic who contributed a lot towards the formation of the Pan-Africanist movement and the liberation project to decolonize the African continent. And he has immense contributions in the philosophical project of understanding the oppression of black people towards liberation. GARVEY, on the other hand, a very practical man, the biggest, most effective organizer of the 20th century. GARVEY was what we can call a proper giant in the efforts to liberate black people. You know, he formed businesses. He had this idea of repatriating black people back to motherland Africa, and he, as a consequence, entered into the shipping industry, shipping business, where he bought some ships to do this job. But his biggest contribution was the organizing of black people. He was a Jamaican who went to the US and formed a massive movement, really path-breaking work. And his message went throughout the world, including in the African continent, including in South Africa. There were GARVEYites who were part of the liberation movement that were formed here in South Africa. So these two colossal figures should have worked together. But we find that there was a big fallout between GARVEY and W.E.B. Of course, GARVEY started the open warfare as a consequence of sending people to a conference in the UK, and the GARVEYites were treated badly. They arrived late, and GARVEY claims that it was a sabotage by W.E.B. W.E.B. responded with a series of attacks on GARVEY, claiming that he was ugly, bringing in the whole issue of colorism, because GARVEY was a dark African and W.E.B. light in complexion. GARVEY responded by saying W.E.B. was a misleader. W.E.B. did something which a lot of black people do. He started investigating the businesses of GARVEY. And he published his findings, creating therefore the condition for the state to arrest Garvey. It was Du Bois' work that claimed that there was corruption happening in the businesses of Garvey. And the state, which was waiting for an opportunity to pounce on Garvey, used that excuse to lock Garvey up. And Garvey spent, as we know, a lot of time in jail as a consequence of this work initially done by Du Bois, claiming to expose a charlatan, but empowering the white system to destroy one of the biggest, most organized, most powerful instrument of black liberation, Garvey. And I think that is a big lesson that we need to draw from that colossal battle between these massive historical figures in the black community. That when we fight, we cannot fight in such a way that we end up empowering the enemy to destroy one of our own. Of course, the critique which emanates from the attitude of Du Bois towards Garvey is that one of elitism. That Du Bois believed in the talented 10, believe in an elite which must liberate the rest. Garvey, on the other hand, worked with the masses to empower them, to create a movement which is from the masses, because the people are their own liberators. What should have happened really is the synthesis of the two, where mass mobilization, mass organization is assisted by intellectual development of the most advanced amongst us. These two things should not operate in conflict with each other. Instead, they must work in conjunction with one another. This is the only way we can assist ourselves to fight the enemy. So we can learn from the Garvey-Du Bois conflict the fact that each time we do so, we shoot ourselves in the foot. History will judge Du Bois very harshly as an assistant to the white project to destroy one of the most powerful, potent effort to liberate black people. But this comes from ideological orientation. Du Bois was an elite and believed in elite power. Garvey, on the other hand, was a mass-based leader who believed in the power of the masses. And clearly these two ideological orientations come into conflict. And we see Du Bois, through action, siding with the enemy. Some people, of course, claim that Du Bois directly worked with the American government to destroy our leader, Garvey. That evidence, it is not so solid, but that speculation, it was very rife, and Garvey himself believed that Du Bois had something to do with his demise. We learned from this conflict that black people have to operate differently. We have to work together instead of working against each other. Go Google the conflict between Garvey and Du Bois to learn more about this big historical moment where two black giants went against each other, and we are not any better for it. Isolate.